so you can see it. Can you all see my screen? Let me know in the chat section. Okay. Okay. So we've talked about a lot of things. Just looking back at our classes, taught you how to save local styles as it is over here. Saving text, saving colors, saving effects, drop shadows and the likes. I also taught you how to name components and styles. Taught you how to create components and variants. I taught you how to make shapes, regular shapes and custom shapes. I've taught you about the box model, which is this. And the last class we talked about typography, how to pair fonts, how to generate font pairing, how to align fonts, and a whole lot of other things. So today we're going to be talking about forms. And when I say forms, what I really mean is the input fields, right? So the places you type the text into. And your form is basically a rectangle. So, okay, let me do it to scale. So to create an input field, your input field has a typical input field should have the text area, right? Should have the text area. It should have the, let me zoom in a bit so you can see what I'm typing. Should have a text area. It should have a leading icon. It should have a trailing icon. It should have output text, place order text. It should have error text, which sometimes, depending on how you design your form, could replace this one. So it could be helper text when the user is still doing the writing or the user has not touched the form. And when the user does something that is wrong, the helper text is replaced with the error text. What else should your typical form have? I think this is basically much what it should have. Then the most important one I forgot, a label. Right? So let's create a typical form, or a typical input field. Right? So let me just draw this and let's give it a size of 24 by 24, which is like one of the typical sizes for icons. And I'm gonna type in a placeholder text that says, let's say, enter your full name, for example, and we align this, and I'm using 8 pixel distance between both elements, and we can put this, let's say, somewhere here. Everything will make sense in a second, right? So what I'm trying to do here is I want to use auto layouts because I'm sure if you wanted to create the text field, the first thing you'd have done is to draw a rectangle, which isn't bad, but I just love using auto layout, right? So what I want to do is take this tool and Shift A, which is to add the auto layout, right? And adjust it to the middle. And by the way, if I'm doing something too fast or you're not understanding, just let me know. So adjust this to the middle, then take this tool, because now you have this together as one, and you have this. You can take this tool apply auto layout Shift A. So now you have the full auto layout. Then you can include padding around. So let's say we want, let's say 12, 12 from the sides and 16 from top, 16 from bottom, just as an example, right? Then you can give it a fill. White is okay. Let's just give it a rounded corner. So 8, for example. So let's assume these are typical input field, right? And this is a placeholder text. And a lot of times the placeholder text is not as bold as this. So you can decide to take the color down to something, maybe something around this, but with good contrast. And we can then create, sorry about that. Let me just type it out. We can assume, okay, this is the name. We can place this on top. And what size is this? 12? Let's try to maintain proper font sizes. So let's assume I use 12 for this and 14 for this. You can decide to put this in auto layout as well. That is the entire thing. Are you following up to this point? Because I've used about 2 different auto layouts or 3 different auto layouts. And I don't know if you're already familiar with auto layouts. I know I talked about it briefly, but is everyone familiar with it? Can you just reply on the chat channel? So I know if I'm going too fast or not. Okay, so if you all attended this class, you remember we used auto layouts to create these buttons, right? And I mentioned the difference between using auto layout and using a regular frame. And I'll show that here again. So let's assume to create this, I just drew a rectangle. Then I put in some text. Keep pasting in here. Okay. Let's say I align this. And let's say frame. I've created it into a frame, right? And the person begins to type, for example. This happens, right? What auto layout does for you is that it can make this field expand. But normally with form fields, because when you have, I'm just explaining input field for now, but in a regular form, you would have fixed width of some of these things. So it could be something like this. And this could be like first name, last name, phone number, email, blah, blah, blah. And you wouldn't expect this to expand. But the reason I'm using auto layout is that if, for example, I don't want this icon, or I don't want this icon, once I delete this, I would have to manually do this. Do you understand? But auto layout, I shouldn't do that. Do you see the difference? So it adapts, right? So to create auto layouts, all you do is select the element you want, then you right click and add auto layout, or you can select two elements, right click auto layout, or select everything, right click auto layout. The reason why I selected this and this first is because I want this to always remain on this side, which of course I can do with constraints. But I also want it such that if I delete this item, I want this to go back, right? So this is one way to do it. Another way to do it is that I think I'm going too deep into the auto layout, but yeah, select this to Shift A and adjust the alignment. Now this is like the parent component, right? If I double click into this, you would see resizing, right? And it says fixed width fill container. The same thing goes for top and bottom. If I select fixed width, it means the width is fixed like this at 105. It doesn't adjust to fit the component, right? So you see what happens? It doesn't go past 105. And I can decide to increase it manually and say, okay, I want it to be here, which is like 8 pixels away from this, which is okay. And that means if I keep typing, this is what happens, right? So that means all my text gets here, stops, and, continues. And if I decide to change this to fill container, well, you wouldn't see any difference because the parent element itself, it's already this size. When a situation whereby this is still like this, and the parent container is like this, you can change this from fixed width to fill container, and it automatically fills to the parent container. I know I'm saying jargons now, and you might not really understand, but we'll have to move on for now. Right, so we've created this component, which is somewhat our text field for now. And this is the trailing icon. Yeah, this is the trailing icon. This is the leading icon. This is the placeholder text. This is the label. The helper text most times is at the bottom. Some people put it here, and it's always more often than not a lower contrast. Some people make it a lower size as well, but you can decide to, you can say maybe it's some kind of let's just say this should be the name on your passport. So it should look something like this. Some people don't like this because then the label is too far from the input field. So it's better to put it at the bottom. So the user always knows that, okay, this should be this. And the other reason why some people don't like it on the top is that, let me duplicate this. Let's assume this is a web screen and you have two forms side by side. And your helper text is on top for this, while this one doesn't need an helper text. How do you align this? Do you align it this way? Do you align it this way? It just looks off, right? But when it's at the bottom, it solves that problem for you. All right, so I just wanted to create something with this full, with everything we've listed here. Are we following? So the reason I created everything like this is because you might want to create different text inputs, one without the leading trail, one with the without the leading icon, one with the trailing icon, one without helper text, one with helper text, and that's, as you might know, would have to do with variants, right? And okay, let's just go that way. So let's assume I create this one and I say I don't want this leading text. I turn it off. It shrinks, but we don't want it to shrink, right? Remember I said your font field would have a fixed width. So we can select this one, this frame, change it from org contents to fixed width, right? From org contents to fixed width. So that way, if I turn this off, it remains the same size, right? Then I can take this guy and say, okay, I don't want this one. And that's adjust. And you can see this has moved again. So you'd have to, do that manually and change this to fixed width. And then you can see it moves, right? So you can check the distance between. This is 12 from here, and we didn't change this, which is one of the reasons. So remember I said you can adjust the parent component or, okay, 1 second. Just a few. So you can reduce this. This is the spacing between each of the components. So if we take this down to 0 or to 8, which is what we want, you can then adjust this way, making sure that this is still 12, and then change this to it's already in field container. So instead of doing that twice, I'll just take it again. And by the way, you can already make this a component, but I'm just doing it again for example purposes. So we take this, hide it, and you can see it stays, right? You can say you want one without helper text. So let's just create another one without the helper text. You can say you want one. Let's see, what else can we create from here? Okay, let's create a variant first and see what we've done so far. So we can select all of this, and no, you should always have a label. You should always have a label, right? And create a component set. And we just call this input fields, right? And it has created this for us. So we can rename this, and let's call it, no, you know what? Let's do it this way, and we'll add several properties. So this first property, we're going to call it, let's say, trailing icon. Like, do you want a trailing icon? Let's add another property. We'll call it leading icon, right? But what I want basically is yes and no, right? So do you want the trailing icon, yes or no? We'll be able to add it, but just follow me. We can add another property, and for placeholder text, you want a placeholder text. What other variants do we have? So if this is trailing icon, yes, leading icon, yes, place other text, yes, that means we should have this. So yes. So let's change each one. So this doesn't have the place order text, right? So we change this from yes to add a new value, no. And it has a leading icon. It has a trailing icon. So let's rename this to, for example, yes. We take this, let's rename this to no for trailing icon. It has a leading icon and it has a placeholder text, so that is fine. For this one, it has the trailing icon, so select yes. Leading icon, no. I'm sure. Leading icon, no. Placeholder text, yes. While this has everything, so yes, yes, yes. So what does this mean? This means if I create an instance from that component, helper text, well, yeah, you have a point. Not all form fields have helper text, so we can do that as well. So let's create another variant. You can just click the plus button and yeah, okay. Not all form variants or not all forms have placeholder text, but from the way I've designed this, the user text, right, replaces this text. So in this situation, we don't need a variant for with placeholder text or without placeholder text. If not, it might become a bit confusing to the developers. So let's do without that for now, right? So what this means is that if I have this input field, I can decide I don't want a trailing icon, I want one, I don't want a leading icon, I don't want a placeholder text. Do you understand up to this point? Okay, I need more answers before I move on so we don't come back. Okay, so another thing you might have noticed is when I changed this from, you'll notice this text jumped a bit. It's kind of jumps. So that means you need to check the alignment of this. You change this from this to this, and hopefully that should fix the issue. So always remain at the center. You can do that for everything. Always remain at the left center. Right. So hopefully that fixes it. Let's check. Yeah, you can see it's no longer jumping. So this is just one of the first step to creating different variants. So I just wanted to show you how you can create variants for all of this. Now, the thing is, when it comes to forms have different states, right? And what I mean is this. Let me show you an example of a form looking at Shipwright's design system. Forms have different states. So you have the active state. You have the active state. You can see it just uses a little gray border. You have the focus state. And what the focus state is basically is when you click into the input field, right? To show the user that, okay, this is what you're currently doing. This is the field you are focused on. You have this is just an extra state from them. Okay, you can have the solid state, the success state, depending on how you want to design your form. It's not necessary you have this. Some people don't have this because if the field is correct, sometimes it just show like a check mark. So what I mean is, instead of having a green border around this becomes a check mark, or this appears with a check mark. An example can be when you want to put in your email, So in a situation whereby, is it just Yusuf or can anyone hear me? Okay, so Yusuf, it might be something with your network or your computer. So a situation can be when you're asked to put in your email and you put in a very random thing, maybe without the at, you made a mistake and used gmail.com. So this can become X, that is the wrong, what's it called? To let you know that you've made an error. You understand? I should use an icon, but just for explanation purposes, I'm using a text for now. Right, so this becomes X. And if it's correct, it becomes a check mark, right, to let the user know that you've done the right thing. So it's not compulsory to use this. But when the user makes a mistake for form validation, it's always good to draw the user's attention to that place where they've made the mistake. So it's always good to highlight the border in red for error states. And deactivated or disabled, you just reduce the contrast of the form and the text in it. And you see they've done the same thing here, icon right, icon left. So yeah, let's create some states. Let's create some states. So let's assume, still using this one as an example. I will detach it for now because it's not, let me just detach it for now. So let's assume this is the active state. And you remember how I taught you to name fields or to name components to save styles and everything. So we can say this is, let's say input field / active. For example, you can always rename it whenever you want. And we create another state and we call this hover state. Let's say this is the hover state. And for the hover state, we want the stroke to be blue, for example. So the user knows that, okay, his mouse or our mouse is already into this. Then you can design a focus state. Which is when you click into this. So your focus state might have something like, how do I do this? I want to add, okay, let me just should I control D? And I think I'm doing the right thing, but okay, you know what? Let's assume once the user clicks in, the placeholder text leaves, and you have this cursor thing that blinks, this thing. Yeah. And we can put maybe maybe a drop shadow, something like that. Just increase it and reduce Y to like 2, and you give it this blue color. Probably just take the transparency down. Yeah, something like this. This is active over focus, and we can do another one for disabled. Yep. we can do one for disabled. In that case, this shouldn't be very visible. So let's assume we're using this color 9A, 9A. So we can just change it from here. So 9A, 9A. We change this to 9A. Let me see, does it look too similar to this? We can also decide to change the background from pure white to something a bit gray. Yeah, something like this. So the user knows that, okay, this isn't working, right? I will call this disabled. Right, so we can create variants from this, and we can also we talked about the error state as well, yeah? So we can create an error state, and in this case, because of the way we've designed the form, you can make you'd have to change this from the helper text to the error that should be shown. But we're not concerned about the copy just right now, so we change the stroke from this to this. And if you want, you can make the field somewhat with a red background, whitish red, sort of. Yeah, something like this. And the user would have entered some things. So yeah, I rename this to error state. So now you can create them as components and combine as variants and do at your will. So if we look at let's look at another design system. They've created the active state. This is like a large form field, medium form field, and small form field, I suppose. Yeah, so you can see size small, a type, and a state. And let's take one out of it. So you can switch between the sizes. This says icon left, icon right, prefix to icons. For how we did ours, you toggle between, if you want a left icon or a right icon. They've put it as together, right? And prefix suffix, which basically means it could be something like maybe you need to put in the weight of something, and this could be kilograms, so it remains here. But the problem with this is if I want to remove the suffix, I have to always go into the layer, but some people might not know, so that's why I use the toggle instead. And the states as well, hover focused. So this is the hover state with the blue light. This is focus states with a shadow. This is the typing state. I don't know what that is. Field and disable state. Right, so you can see that for each type, so for each no icon, left icon, right icon, two icons, prefix and suffix, they all have hover state, focus state, press state, typing state, disabled state. So that means this little variant we've created, right, all need to have these states. That means our variant is going to expand, maybe something like this. And each of these guys, so if I move this down a bit, each of them need to have different states. So let's just create components from this, create multiple components, and as you might have guessed, we would have to rename this a bit because once you select this, you would see some variants are missing properties. So what does that mean? So looking at this, we have trailing icon, leading icon, placeholder. What we're missing now is the state. So what is the state of this guy? We don't know. What is the state of this guy? We don't know. So we'd have to introduce a new property called state. Before I go on, are you following or are you lost? Are you... So I don't move too far. Okay. More responses. More responses. Okay. 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 Two people seems to be lost. Okay, Yusuf, where let's start with Yusuf. Where are you lost? You can unmute. Design path says you can unmute. Yusuf, can you unmute to ask your question? If Yusuf is not ready, okay, can you unmute to ask your question?
I think I get the whole of the layout thing and everything, but the whole putting together, I got lost. Like you creating stuff, I'm trying to explain.
You mean creating the variants?
Yes.
Okay, do you know how to create variants? I think that's the first question.
Yeah, you say like I will create the component.
A what?
Like I will make this thing a component.
Mm-hmm.
Then there will be an option beside, according to what I saw from your screen. So there will be an option by the side showing variants also.
Okay, did you attend the first class?
Yes, I did.
Okay, so I've not really done anything different, right? So I'm going to recap. Do you understand how I created these variants, the first four?
I understood the part that you were trying to, you added auto layout, trying to show that okay, it's going to be responsive
Mm-hmm.
with that, and you trying to show the, I don't know, the whole thing in but you extending the columns. That's where the whole thing got mixed up.
Oh, you mean where I started adding these states?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay. I'll recap. Okay, let's go back. Looks like I stopped sharing by mistake. Okay, I'm sharing again. So I mentioned that form fields or input fields have different states, right? I should probably just show you in a normal field or in a website. I'm going to share my web screen so you can see it. Just 1 second. I'm trying to look for. Can you see my web browser?
Yes.
Okay. Now, if you look at this, this is like the default state for the forms, right? Right now, there is no other state. I don't know why they didn't do that. But there should be a little indicator, which is actually the cursor changing from arrows to this. But at the same time, we try to go a little further by changing the visual appearance of the form when in other states. And this is the placeholder text, like I mentioned. Now, when I click on this, you can see the state changes. You have the blue stuff, the blue border around it. This is the focus state I tried to explain, right? And let me see if they have like an error state, something like that. Now, this is the disabled state. You can see it's not clickable. It doesn't change from the arrow to this thing, right? And we talked about what other states, error states. I don't know if they have it here. They don't. But basically, when you type in your email address and the form needs to verify that's an email address, instead of having this blue border, you have the red border, right? This was what I was trying to explain in Figma. And that is what we've created so far. So we have the default states, which is this one, for this one, because we have 4 different types of forms, right? We created 4 different types. One has the placeholder, leading trail, the leading icon, trailing icon. One doesn't have the leading icon. One doesn't have the trailing icon. One has both the leading and trailing icon, but without the placeholder text. So we need to create these states, which I've just shown you in my browser, for each of them, right? And we've started with this one. We created the hover state. So when the mouse enters, it gives this blue border. When the user clicks into the form, you get that little drop shadow. When it's disabled, it looks this way. When there's an error, it looks this way. So all I did was create a component set, because you can't just add a regular element into a variant. It has to be a component, a master component. So I created multiple components and I brought it here and I put it beside this because they're together. They're basically the same thing, but just different states. Do you understand up to this point?
Yes.
Okay. Then I said, because it's a variant, how can we, where's that instance I pulled out before? Okay. So looking at this instance, all we can change right now is leading icon, trailing icon, or placeholder text. That's the only thing we can do. What if I want it to be a focus state? Does this mean I have to edit it all the time and do this? No, I don't have to. So we need to create something or add that property to the variant, which we've done, but right now it's not visible on the variant. That's why when I click on the parent element, it says that there is no, there's an error. So some variants are missing properties. And if I select the invalid variants, you can see it's these 4 variants that we just added. So what did we do? Select the parent element, come back to these 3 dots, add a new property, and we'll call it state, right? And I want to call this the default state, so default is okay, right? So selecting this trailing icon, yes. Leading icon, yes. Placeholder, yes. Default state, good. But we called this the hover state, if you remember correctly. So we change this to yes, because it has placeholder text. Trailing icon, yes. Leading icon, Yes, you can see some of those names we gave it are in the wrong set, so it shouldn't be here. So we change this back to yes, and we change the state from default to over. So we need to add over because it's not there at the moment. So over. Then we come to the next one, which is the focus state. Trailing icon, yes. Leading icon, yes. Does it have a placeholder text? It does. So what's the state? Focused, but we don't have it, so we add it. Same thing for disabled. Trailing icon, yes. Leading icon, yes. Placeholder, yes. We don't have disabled yet, so we add it. Disabled. Then for the error state, trailing icon, yes. Leading icon, yes. Placeholder, yes. And error state. So once we select the parent element, we no longer have that error, right? And now from this instance, we can change it. Trailing icon. Do you want a trailing icon? Do you want a leading icon? Do you want placeholder text? Hover state, focus state, disabled state, error state. Is this clear so far, guys? How did I change the placeholder text to the editor? I don't understand your question, Kevin. Can you unmute and ask your question so we move on? I just changed you have it on your keyboard. It should be close to the enter key. Depending on the type of keyboard you use, it's around the enter key. Either it's on top or by the side. Or, yeah, it's the same thing with the backslash. Okay, so so you understand this? That means if I was to go on with this, I would have to create the different states for this one. So 1, 2, 3. So I would have 1, 2, 3, 4 times 3. I have 12 more forms to design, right, for this guy, so they can have the same state as well. Then I can be able to switch between each of them and each of the states, right? But I'm not going to do that today. So the next thing I want to talk about is you can design your form in different ways. So your form doesn't necessarily have to be like this. So let's just take this to the side. You don't necessarily have to have like a name on top with the, this design, basically. So you can do something like this. You want to have access to this Figma file. That shouldn't be an issue. Yeah, I'll just send you the link after the class. So this is one way to design. You can, let me just get rid of this for now. You can say you want your default state, for example, to have a stroke. Want your default state to look like this. So that means your hover state, your focus state will be a bit different, maybe the blue color or something else. You can design your form this way. I think material design uses something like this. Sorry, 1 second. You can design your form with just you can say you want it to be a line, right? Let's give it this, and let me put this. No, I'm doing the wrong thing. You can say you want your form to be like this. So instead of having the borders around it, it can look something like this. You can say you want your form to have this. So let me just get rid of the auto layouts for now so we can move faster. Get rid of auto layouts, sorry. You can want your form to have a kind of background like this, maybe a lighter color. Yeah, something like this. Let's just get rid of this. So your label can be somewhere here, and it looks this way. So let me just draw a frame around it so you can see everything I'm doing. So this can be a lighter color. You can design your form to still look something like this, but then the background covers even the label. What am I doing? Sorry. Reuse the label. Yeah, you can have it something like this. Of course, you'd have to give like padding and all that. You can have it, what other design style do we have? You can have it like this as well. Auto layout. Just get rid of the auto layout. It's faster. This is a problem I have with auto layout. Let me use this as an example, which is pretty much almost the same thing. So this can be white and this can have the gray border, some border region. So yeah, it can be something like this. You can design it in what other way? Trying to think of some people design it this way, but it's not good practice. Sometimes it can produce problems. So that is having your labels by the side like this, which I don't like doing because it's not good practice. And the reason why it's not good practice is, say, for example, you have a form and you say, okay, you have the name, you have the phone number, you can see it begins to cut into the field. Of course, you can say you want to do this, but then it's already becoming, your form is already looking a bit inconsistent. I don't know if you get what I'm saying. I've messed up this entire thing. Sorry. Yeah. Oh shit, I've stopped sharing. Sorry. Some of the shortcuts on Figma are the same with this. So it's for some reason my system is just going blank and coming back on. And I can't control it. So Let me see if I can. What's wrong with this thing? Can you guys still see my system? Because looks like my system is messed up. Yeah, sorry for that. The app is really bugging. So we stopped at creating. I was talking about the disadvantage of using that left label thing. Um, yeah, so I was saying that it could cause a lot of issues, especially when you have long labels and also when you have like email address and all that. Some people might decide to do this and say, okay, we put it this far, so that's when you have long labels like email address, something, then you don't have to adjust all the time. But then this spacing is really awkward. Some people try to do this by right align, something like this. But yeah, this isn't the best way to go. So it's best to have your labels on top. So another design style you can do is I think something like this. By the way, I shared the link to this file in the Slack channel. So another design style you can do is something like this. You can give this a background. I mean, this is how I do it in Figma, but I don't know if there's any option. So it sits like this on top, while this, is here. And you can always animate this. So for example, if the form, so some people might not use the full name because they might not use the placeholder text because you can say, let me just show it to you what I mean. So they can take this. If not done prototyping, if I'm correct, but I just want to show something. So they can say, instead of having this, what they'll just do is put here and say full name, right? And okay, this would be the normal text size. That is when you start typing. And once the user clicks on it, like clicks into this field, this goes up and becomes smaller. And let me just copy this and use to show that it's now active. And we can change the color of the line to maybe blue. I don't know why I'm liking blue today, but yeah. Just to, be a bit more specific. Yeah, so the focus state can look something like this. But to prototype it, we can call this, let's call this label. And let's put this in a frame. I'll put this in a frame as well. This would be the indicator, right? Because to do this prototype, they need to have the same name. So this is correct where it is, but we give it a transparency of 0, so it's not visible. And this is still full name. We'll call this label. Label indicator. This is line 3 and this is line 2, but let's call it let's just say bottom border. Yeah, just to make it a bit visible for you guys. Are we missing anything? Let's call this the background color. And we'll call this the background color. So all we want to show is when the user clicks on this field, we want this to go up and this can, do what it's supposed to do. So we can prototype this and connect this to this and say on click, not scroll to change to, but it's not visible. Okay, I know what to do. Create a component set. Yep. So like this, change to this and smart animate, and this change back to this, smart animate, and we basically create an instance from this. And let's see if that works. I just want to show you how that form kind of works. Yeah, can you see? This is how it should be prototyped. So on focus, the background changes color, the borderline changes color, the label becomes smaller, and we get the indicator, right? And to make it more a bit fun, you can do something like this and change this to let's say 12, and this we can add another one. Comes to this, after delay of let's say 500 seconds, change to this smart animate, and this nope comes here after delay. I hope what I'm doing is correct. Okay, change to this. So let me restart it. This is not a prototyping class, by the way, but you can see what I'm trying to achieve, the cursor blinking tinning when you yeah. So let's move on. That is about different form design. I don't know if there are other design styles, but you can definitely look that up. We've spent an hour and 12 minutes. So next now I want to talk about is there are different types of input field. So for example, I've called this the phone number, but depending on who you are designing for. So if you're designing for a local Nigerian company, for example, you might not need to do the, what I want to show is this. You might not need to do blah, 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 blah. You might not need to show the country flag, right? So some forms would have this, and this would be the country flag, and there would be like a little drop down somewhere here. So the user can select the country because of the country code, right? But if you're designing for an international audience, then yeah, you need to do that. The same thing goes for if you're designing like for a user to input maybe MasterCard or debit card details, you'd have to design the placeholder text in such a way that, so let's assume this is card number. By the way, if I'm too fast, let me know. I just want to create time for questions. For the card details, you know, it's always 16 digits, if I'm correct. So that way you can separate it, let's say like this. So the user knows, okay, I want to input card details, and you can also put an icon somewhere here to show if it's like Visa or MasterCard or a Maestro card or something like that. And if you were to design a text area, so let's say it's a contact form and they say, do you have any message or what is your inquiry? Of course, it wouldn't be like this. It will look something like this. Let's say leave a message. Of course, I don't like this layout, but I've mentioned that before. So for leave a message, it could be, let's give it a stroke. So leave a message. It could look something like this, you know, like a bigger text box. And a lot of times they have limits. So you would have, oh shit, sorry. You would have maybe 0 out of 600 characters. Yeah. You'd have something like this at the bottom. So the type of input field you're designing for might differ. Right, so let me just put this back here so you guys don't get lost when you see the file. But anyways, you always watch the recording, so that doesn't matter. What else do I want to talk about today? We've talked about the state, we talked about different styles of design, we've talked about the alignment, we've talked about the different types of input fields. Of course, you have other types. You have like steppers, where you'd have the plus and minus button. You can have like a color picker, something like this. Let's see. Yeah, this is an example of an input field, right? If you can see my mouse cursor. So you have one to enter the color code, you have one to enter the transparency, you have one to select the color you want using the color picker. So this is an example of an input field. I talked about stepper. I talked about the text, like leaving a long text. We've talked about card, putting card details. We've talked about, of course, the search bar is definitely going to look like this. The only difference is this would say search or search for something, and this is going to be the magnifier, which is the search class. Drop downs, basically the same thing, just that this is going to be a drop down arrow, and this can be some form of text. What else? The same thing goes for a calendar date. So this would show like the date, the month, the year. So instead of this, it would be like DDMM YY, and this is going to be a calendar icon. What else am I missing? By the way, if you have any questions, you can let me know. So another thing is, if you have a very long form, let's say the form has 15 to 20 inputs, right? A lot of times, seeing a very long form can be very daunting. It looks like a lot of work has to be done. But the best thing to do is to separate your forms. So in a situation whereby you have to collect the user's name, the address, the phone number, the card details, the different things, right? You can always split it into sections. So you can say the first section is for personal information. Yeah. And of course, visual hierarchy, it has to be bigger. I've not defined anything yet. I think we defined before. Okay, yeah, we did. Oh, we didn't define everything, but yeah. So you can say the first section is for personal information, and you know, just to make it cute, you can do something like this, and just a thin line, and you can put in the forms. So, sorry, I just been taking the entire thing. Okay, you know what? Let's use the one we've created. Let's take this one so we can easily adjust what we need to adjust. So this can be like first name. Looks like I took the wrong thing. Oh, yeah, this doesn't have strokes, so let's give it strokes. And if you have questions, you can drop them now so I can attend to them. So let's give it strokes. Am I using the same stroke? Light gray. Okay, yeah. The light gray. Not the fill, the stroke. Light gray. Yeah. So it could be you want to collect both the first name and the last name because of database purposes. Okay, I see what I did. We need one more. We need one more variant. One more variant without this one, without icons, basically. One more variable without icons. Why did it change in size? We'll fix that some other time. But yeah. So no state defaults. Yep. So no. Yeah, so you can say you want to collect the last name, you want to collect the first name because of how it's arranged at the back end. You want to collect the phone number, for example. You want to collect the, I don't know, can't think of something for now. But yeah, we can say that's the first part of the form. Then this part can be the card details. So you'd have to put in your card number. You'd have to put in the the card name. Of course, sometimes the name comes before the number, but yeah, you'd have to put in the, what else? Expiry date. And you'd have to put in the security code or the, is it called CVC? Something like that. Yeah. Then another thing people talk about is, say, for example, you have to collect the phone number, the address, right? And in your backend, it's not specified as house number, street name, city, and all. It's just address. So in that situation, you need to make this bigger. So I just have to detach this for now. So this can occupy this, right? So you shouldn't say because it's just an address and all my forms are, 2 columns or something, then you leave it this way. No, because people's house addresses can be longer than usual. You have to do it this way, right? The same, it was what I was explaining for this. For leaving a message, they'll type in a lot of characters. So you don't leave the form like this. You'd have to design it to look this way, right? I just needed to point that out. So yeah, it's always good to, section or categorize your forms, especially when it's too long. You can do it this way. You can decide to add like a collapsible, you can make it collapsible so that this is a drop down icon. And if I have a drop down icon anywhere, yeah, I don't, but yeah. So I like using this, especially when it's a bit longer. So that way the user can always collapse and see what he wants to see. So it can be, for example, COVID information. This is a terrible form, by the way. Why would I ask for COVID details and card details? The same point, but yeah. And the next one could be, I don't know, can't think of anything. Church information. So the user knows that, okay, there are still forms underneath these guys, but I'm not displaying everything at once, which sometimes can be daunting. Another thing you can do is, instead of making it, one long form, you can also put them in different steps. So that means this can be your step 1. So this is going to be collapsible. This can be your step 1. We can say, we can call this step 1 of 3, for example. So the user knows, okay, there are only going to be 3 sections for this. And you're going to have like a button somewhere, yeah? So let's just pick one of our buttons. So this can say, let's just expand this. So this can say next or continue or proceed, something like that. Let's just say proceed. I can't see what I'm typing. And let's just increase the size so everyone can see it. Yep. and align to the center. Something like this. So when the user clicks on proceed, they see the next page, which will be towards the card details, and it will change to step 2 of 3. So just so if you're looking at the file later on, you understand what I'm saying. This becomes step 2 of 3. So yeah, so proceed and all. Of course, my design is not aligned and all that, but you understand what I'm trying to say. So yeah, that's the way the 2 methods you can use to, make your forms look less daunting and less cumbersome. I think another thing I would want to talk about is the type of form you're designing. So for example, if this says password, right? When the user is typing user password, of course, we all know it should either show asterisks, that is the stars, or like circles, and have the icon by the side that says, that shows the, what's it called? That's icon, hide or show. So you can either type in hide or you put the icon, for passwords. What else? You can also do stuff like autocomplete, but I don't know if that should be part of this class. It's basically, it's easy. So when the user starts typing, it's autocomplete. That's what it's trying to say. So in a situation like this, for example, you can say the user is typing in, let's say food. The user is typing a bar, right? We can do something like this and just put and egusi soup, but this part is gonna be a lighter color, right? So this is somewhat like autocomplete. So when the user taps enter, it automatically fills it, right? And if this was to be a search bar, you would have a drop down at the bottom showing the list of various options, right? So I wanted to point that out. And yeah, so the drop down is called auto suggest, but when it automatically fills the field for you or shows you like I've shown you just now, it's called autocomplete. We've talked about errors. So I mentioned that if any of this field has errors, we should show it with the red marker or the red border. So if the card number has errors, you can change it to this. Of course, I've not created this things properly because you can see what's happening here, but yeah. You can change this to this. This one has an error. This one has an error, for example. You get, so we let the user always know that, okay, back in the days, you just see a message at the top saying there are some errors in your form, fix it or something like that. And it doesn't let the user know where exactly the errors are. So it's good to always let the user know that, okay, this is the part with errors. This is the part with errors. And if there's a form of explanation your error can give, you can put the placeholder text and say, okay, this should be blah, blah, blah. And it should also be in red like this. Do you understand? I think that's pretty much all I can think of right now. And as usual, if I see any blog or any book or anything that can help in any way, I'm gonna send it to the channel, to the UI channel, so you can, read it. Okay, we have 30 minutes more. Are there any questions? anything you'd like me to recap on, or feedback, maybe I just thought total rubbish, I'd like to point that out. Let me know. Questions, comments, anything. Anybody? Okay, so do we all understand everything? Oh, modals and pop-ups. I completely forgot about that. Well, it's how do you design models and pop-ups? We've talked about shadows before, Ayola. So modals are basically, say you have, for example, you have this, and you want to show the user adding shadows to text field. We talked about it today. So you want to show the user something really important, right? And when I mean something important, not sign up to my newsletter, because that can be really annoying. It could be a web app. The user is logging in for the first time and you want to show the user a few little things, then yeah, you can use a modal. Or you've released a new feature and you want the user to know, you can use a modal as well. So modals are not, I wouldn't say there's any big deal per se. It's just to know when to introduce the modal and how to design it. But I'll just show you a quick one. So let's assume we have this modal and the modal has, let's say, an icon over here, and we have some form of text, maybe I don't know, new release 6.0, something like that. Right? And you have some text here. Do I have a Lorem plugin? I don't. So 1 second, I just want to fill it with text. Yeah, so let's assume this is our modal and you have buttons. Maybe this says let's go, and this one says cancel. Let's change this to a secondary button. Cancel, I think I used 24. Yeah, so let's assume this is our modal. Your modal can be laid out in different ways depending on what you want to show. Some modals have the X button, which people advise a lot. It could be you're trying to warn the user, are you sure you want to delete this? Or it could be that you're trying to confirm something. You can say, okay, you've selected blah, blah, blah. Do you want to continue with this? You understand? So the way the modal is designed really depends on the content in it. And to show this modal, you can do it in two ways. The first way is you can obviously bring it here and put a little overlay, right? You give it something like this, and yeah, you have your modal. So everyone knows this is a modal, right? And of course, you can give it some shadow. I remember I talked about smooth shadow in the first class. So I like what I see already, so just apply, right? So we all know this is a modal. So you can either do it this way, or you can decide not to show it in the design, but show it in prototype. And how does that work? Let's put this here. You can see when I click this button, I want the modal to show up. So let's call this show modal. Show modal, yeah. So when I click this button, show this modal. Now you see I was able to connect this. Why was I able to connect it? Is because the modal is in a frame. If it wasn't in a frame, I wouldn't be able to connect it. So let me show you. On group, let me just draw a rectangle because I know this is what a lot of people will do. They look the same, yeah? But once I do this prototype, I can't connect it because it's not a frame, neither is it a component, neither is it an auto layout. So it needs to be a frame. You select it and you say, when I click on this, I want you to open overlay, right? And centered is fine with me. And I want it here, which is in the center, which is still good. And you can say add a background behind the overlay, which is basically the stuff we did manually. And you can adjust the color, adjust the opacity, and you can say, okay, when I click outside, I want it to close, and you can give it a bit of, animation. So that way, when I go to my prototype, yeah, and I click show modal, we get this. Click outside, it's done. The reason I prefer this method is that when you design this, you need to design another screen to show what happens when you click outside. You understand? So this is way better. And this also helps if you want to design like a drop down. So let's assume this is a drop down, which is a bad drop down. But again, let's assume it's a drop down and it's somewhere here. Sorry. And you want this to show at this point. You want it to show at this point. So let me give it this shadow. So let's just save. Oh, okay, I have some saved shadows already. Yeah. So I want it to drop down at this point. So what I can do is go back to prototype, on click, open overlay, but not center. We don't want it at the center. So what we do is neither do want it at the top left, top corner, neither of these options. So what you do is select manual. And when you select manual, you'll notice it appears here. So it's telling you where do you want to place this, right? So you want to place it here. And that's fine. Close. So when you come back here, you click, you can see it shows. But of course, it's a drop down. I don't want the this, so don't add a background behind. So yeah, that's basically it. So whenever you want to prototype your drop down in the future, remember to do it this way. So yeah, that's basically it about modals. Where I don't know if there's anything I'm missing about modals, or is there something interesting you wanted to know, Kelvin? About modals. So I think the do's and don'ts is don't show a modal when it's not something super important to the user at that point. Is there a difference between modal and pop-up? I think pop-up is just a term people use. Modal is the right word. See that modal or light box. Pop-up is just a layman term. I might be wrong, I don't know, but yeah, I just call them modals. Yeah. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Any other questions from anyone? I would look for a link y'all can, read, just to read up if I see anything interesting. Of course, modals can be also much more complex than this. They can have like forms and all of that, depending on what you're trying to collect. But like I said, it all depends on the context or the content or context, yeah. So, and obviously I can design every scenario. So any other questions before we call it a day? If you're looking for modal options, you can search dribble.com. You would see a lot of modal designs. You can search modals. If you search pop-ups as well, it brings up the same results. Any questions? If there are no questions, I guess we can call it a day. Design power, over to you. Yeah, welcome, guys. Just let me know if you have any questions at all, and we can, talk about it. Okay, we can end the class, and I guess I'll see you guys when we see. Have a lovely night, everyone. Bye.